All right, today we are diving into probably the most complex and fascinating structure in the entire known universe. And the wildest part? It's right inside your own head. So, welcome to our guided tour of the human nervous system.
But let's kick things off with a simple question. How does a thought, something that feels like nothing, turn into a physical action? Think about it. The idea to snap your fingers just pops into your head, and a split second later, there's an actual physical sound in the world. How does that leap happen? Well, that's the core mystery we're gonna unravel today.
To really understand how all this magic works, we've got to look at the plans first. So, let's start with the grand blueprint, the highest level view of this incredible network. Okay, so the whole system is pretty neatly divided into two main parts. First, you've got the central nervous system, the CNS. You can think of this as the command center. It's your brain and your spinal cord, and it's where all the big decisions get made. Then you have the peripheral nervous system, or PNS. This is the information superhighway, just a massive network of nerves that carry all the messages to and from that command center. So, here's the crucial thing to remember. Even though they have different parts, the CNS is tucked away safely in your skull and spine, while the PNS spreads out everywhere else, they are not separate at all. They're two halves of one perfectly seamless system that's talking to itself constantly. Information from your senses flows in, commands to your muscles flow out, and it all happens in the blink of an eye.
But how in the world does something this complex even get built in the first place? I mean, it's an absolute architectural marvel, and it starts way, way earlier than you might think. So let's see how it all comes together. That's right. Just 3 weeks in, when you're barely a speck, the foundations for your entire nervous system are already being laid down. It's a process called neurulation, which is really just a fancy way of saying a flat sheet of cells folds up into a tube. And this is one of the very first, most important things that happens when building a person.
What's so amazing about this is just how simple the process is, yet how profound the result. You've got this flat sheet of cells that thickens up. Then it starts to fold in on itself, almost like a zipper being pulled shut. The edges meet, they fuse together, and boom, you have a hollow tube. This simple structure, the neural tube, is literally the seed from which your entire brain and spinal cord will grow. And from there, things get even crazier. By week 4, that simple tube starts to bulge out at one end, forming 3 little hollow sacs, or vesicles. Just 1 week later, those 3 divide into 5, and these 5 little balloons then twist, expand, and mature into all the incredibly complex parts of the adult brain that we know. It's just amazing, from a simple tube to a thinking machine. So we've seen the big blueprint and how it gets built. Now let's zoom in, way, way in, down to the single unit that makes the whole thing work. We're talking about the ultimate messenger, the neuron. Every neuron has these beautiful tree-like branches called dendrites. You can just think of them as the cell's antennas. Their one and only job is to listen, just constantly picking up incoming signals from potentially thousands of other neurons around them. And all those signals that the dendrites pick up, they all flow right here to the soma, or the cell body. This is the neuron's central processor. Its job is to take all these little go and stop messages, add them all up, and then make a single crucial decision, to fire or not to fire.
And if that decision is fire, the signal is blasted down this one long cable, the axon. It's a wave of pure electrical energy, an action potential, and it can travel at over 200 miles an hour to pass that message along to the next cell in the chain.
So what's fueling all of this constant, high-speed electrical chatter? Well, here's the secret ingredient: mitochondria. These tiny little power plants are stuffed into every single part of the neuron. And here's a wild fact. Your brain is only about 2% of your body weight, but it hogs a whopping 20% of all your body's energy, all just to keep these signals firing. It's simple. No energy, no thoughts. Okay, so we've looked at the whole network and we've met the messenger. For our final stop, let's zoom back out a little bit and explore the main control panel of the command center itself, the lobes of the cerebrum, which is basically the seat of our consciousness. Let's start right up front. Makes sense, right? This is your frontal lobe. And if your brain were a company, this part would absolutely be the CEO. And why the CEO? Well, because it handles all the big executive functions. We're talking planning your day, solving a tough puzzle, making the decision to move your arm, and it even shapes the core of who you are, your personality. This is the part of you that decides. Now, moving back from the front, we find the parietal lobe. The job of this lobe is to take all the raw data flooding in from your senses and build it into a coherent picture of the world. It is the great integrator. This is where you process the feeling of touch, the heat from a fire, or the sting of a paper cut. But it also gives you your sense of space. It's your brain's built-in GPS. It's how you know exactly where your hand is without even looking at it. And it's how you navigate through a crowded room without bumping into everything. Tucked in right behind your temples, on the sides of your head, are the temporal lobes. You can think of these as your brain's professional archivists, because they're in charge of two huge things: sound and memory. So this is where you process every sound you hear, and where you make sense of language. It's how you understand what I'm saying right now. But crucially, it's also where new memories are made and filed away. It's the library of your entire life, and it's key to recognizing faces you know and objects you've seen before. And finally, all the way at the very back of the brain, we have the occipital lobe. This lobe has one incredibly important job: vision. Every single thing that you see is being processed and interpreted right here. It's what turns the meaningless patterns of light hitting your eyes into the rich, vivid, meaningful world you see all around you. So, we've gone from the big picture down to a single cell and back up to the brain's control panel. But here's the most important thing to get. None of these parts works alone. Recognizing a friend's face isn't just your occipital lobe. It needs the temporal lobe to pull up the memory. Deciding to walk across a room uses the frontal lobe to make the choice and the parietal lobe to navigate. It is all one beautiful, perfectly integrated network. Okay, let's do a super quick lightning round recap using our guide here. We really zeroed in on the four major lobes. Remember, up front, the frontal lobe is the CEO making your decisions. The parietal lobe is your sensory integrator, your internal GPS. The temporal lobe on the sides is your archivist for sound and memory, and all the way at the back, the occipital lobe is your dedicated vision center. Now, there are tons of other critical parts, but understanding these four gives you an incredible map of how your brain works.
And all of this brings us to one last kind of mind-bending thought. Every sight, every sound, every emotion you've ever had, it's all just a pattern of electrical signals firing through this network of 86 billion neurons. So if your entire reality is constructed inside this biological machine, what does that really say about perception itself? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining the tour.